We have a very special guest, Ken Trupke. And I'll tell you, let me just give you a little bit about his background. You know, Ken grew up in Milwaukee and started his career as a consultant with two national firms. He moved to Grand Rapids and ran a plastic injection molding company for 14 years and has been an interim executive and turnaround consultant for the past 13 years. But I'll tell you what impresses me about Ken. Dawn and I have been doing this a long time. As we say here at Pici and Pici, we have a lot of water under the bridge. We've been putting on trainings since the late 90s. And I can tell you, we just finished the sales boot camp. Ken is an executive, and he came to the training with his team. He sat on the front row, went through the training, and then he did something we have never, ever, ever had done. He picked up the phone. He led his team by example. That is the mark of a great leader. So help me welcome Ken Trupke.
Hey, Joe. Great to be here.
It's good to have you. How's the weather in Michigan?
Well, it has changed. It's definitely fall/winter now. Last week was unseasonably warm, literally in the 70s. And then today it's back to 40. So kind of more typical Michigan in November.
Well, you need to come back to Florida.
Yeah.
Our neighborhood's got some houses and we'd love to have you.
Yeah. It definitely was warmer during the boot camp.
Well, let's get started. For our audience to get to know you better, I'd like you to explain what you do, who you do it for, and what's unique about what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you. So what I do is help businesses typically in a $4 to $40 million in revenue range, help them increase their sales, focus their team, and ultimately grow profits. And what makes me different is that in addition to systems and structures, which people typically put in place to make those things happen, I also focus on people and culture.
All right. Take that a little deeper. I've seen you work with your people, but the word culture keeps coming up. If you would take a little deeper dive on what you're doing to really create and execute the right culture.
Sure. So when I say culture, the definition that I like to use is it's the collection of behaviors. It's how we all behave together. Seth Godin says it's people like us do things like this. And so the idea is this is how we're going to behave. These are the things that are important. And ultimately, they're so important that they're the criteria we use for hiring and they're the criteria we use for firing. So if you don't fit with the things that we're trying to do, that's okay. You just can't be here. And so the idea is to get people to rally around common approaches, common behaviors, common ways of thinking so that we can move forward together.
Okay. So because this is called Sales Edge, and because I know you're focused in the way of sales, when you look at what are some of your fastballs, your sweet spots in the realm of sales, what are the things that you feel you're best at and you want your teams to be best at?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely both of those pieces. It's that culture, people side, and it's that structure and process side. So one thing I like to do is set up a sales process and really define what are the steps in our process. How are we going to prospect? What are we saying on those calls? Who are we calling? Just the mechanics of the sale. And then the people side of that is getting the right mindset and coaching them up and helping them understand what we're doing. We're helping people. We're not being pushy. It's not something we do to people. It's something we do with and for people. And so working on that people side of things. So it's systems for sure, but also the people side and coaching people up. Because as you well know, sales is hard.
Yeah. So people are always asking me this question. Joe, you and Dawn know people from everywhere, and you know people from all different world. How do we know each other? How did we get together?
So that's a great question and a fun story. So I've been a long time listener of Andy Andrews, and he had you on his podcast. and he introduced you as the #1 sales guru, global trainer in the world. And I fancy myself someone who's deep dives into books and training and teaching, and I'd never heard of you, frankly. Like, how in the world can I not have heard of the #1 sales trainer in the world? So I, obviously demolished that podcast from Andy and listened to that a couple times. I got your book, and then I found your podcast and binge listened to, I don't know, dozens of episodes. And then we connected on the phone. You gave me a call because I texted in to the number to get the 5-video thing, and boom, you called me. How can I help? And then we started a conversation, which led to bringing the team down for the boot camp.
So I'm kind of curious about something. Have you always been the type of leader you are? As far as, I mean, you rolled up your sleeves, buddy. You didn't have to, but I think it was almost shock and awe to your team. But we had 20 other people in the room from all different industries, and their eyes all went to you because they knew your position. Tell me what was going on in your mind and what compelled you just to go get it.
It never occurred to me to not do it. I was down, immersed in the training, and Wednesday morning we're going to make phone calls. And so I was going to make phone calls. I certainly did want to set an example and make sure that I wasn't asking anybody to do anything I myself wasn't doing. And it was a great opportunity to have people see me do it and to get some practice in as well. And so, yeah, it really never occurred to me to not do it. And I was honestly shocked when you told me later that you'd, in your history of all your boot camps, had never had an executive do that. So it's just I guess how I do things. It didn't occur to me to do anything else.
Well, because the nature of the training is so process and skill based, a lot of times people in your position don't even come. Or they come in the room, they grab a bagel, a cup of coffee, and they're gone, and they go out to the pool. But I put you where I put you to be part of your team, but you definitely led by example. Which brings me to my next question, because when I think of you and the time we have spent together, you are a mindset guy, okay? And so, tell me about that. Tell me about you talk about mindset and getting your head in the game. I'd like you to elaborate on that.
Sure. Thank you. So, especially in sales, because sales is hard. It's not hard physically. We're not doing challenging, demanding physical work, but boy, it's emotionally draining. And the way, one thing I really loved about the boot camp was reframing how to think about success and failure when we're making calls, prospecting calls, because typically people judge that based on whether or not they get a yes. And no matter what you're selling, no matter what your product or service is, you're going to get far, far, far more no's than yeses, because you don't know who needs what you're prospecting for. And so it's just, the math is going to be, you're getting a lot of no's, but we're not wired for that. I mean, people just aren't wired to be rejected. We resist that. We want to be accepted. We want to be liked. We want to fit in. And so it's emotionally draining to make prospecting calls and talk to people who don't want what you have. And if you take that personally and take that as a personal rejection of you, well, it'll wear you out. And that's why one of the reasons there's a lot of washout in sales. It's also one of the reasons salespeople are very highly compensated typically, because if you can figure this out, well, it's not for everybody. And so if you can figure it out, you can be very well paid to do what is emotionally difficult and what goes against our nature in a lot of ways.
So let's see if you and I think alike on this. Do you find them with mindset, or do you train them to have mindset?
Well, I think you need to find people with mindset, but I also think that it's a skill that can be developed. I think it's something that you can teach. Now, grit and tenacity and the willingness to stay with it, that's probably more a character trait that people have more than other people. Right. But the actual, like, doing the thing over and over, I've got an analogy I like to use. I call it the cold shower analogy. And the idea is, because sometimes people think, well, if I just do this long enough, it'll get easy. And I've had salespeople tell me that. I know. I just need to make a bunch of calls and then it gets easier. And I say, actually, no, it never gets easier. And the analogy of the cold shower is if you were to jump into the shower, cold shower every day and say, I'm just going to get mentally tough. It's just something I'm going to do. I'm going to jump in that shower every day for 30 days. Well, on the 30th day, it's not comfortable. It's not warm. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm so used to it. This is great. I don't mind it at all. No, it's still awful. The difference is you're different. Now, 30 days into it, it's still an awful experience, but it's just what you do. You don't even think about, yep, getting in a cold shower. That's what I do every day. That's my thing. And that's what it is with prospecting, is that it doesn't get easier. You just get tougher. You just accept it as who you are and what you do. And that's how you're able to repeat it day after day. But I tell people that for both reasons, for the reason of, look, it is hard and it's going to stay hard and it's not going to get easier. So, because otherwise what happens is people think, well, after 30 days of cold calling and prospecting, it'll get easy. And then it doesn't. And like, it's still hard. It's still tough. I still got to kind of gear up for it. Well, yeah, that's why sales, again, people get paid well. So it doesn't get easier. So I don't want people getting into it a month or so and then saying like, I thought this was going to get easy and it's not. So I want to make sure I'm setting expectations. Hey, it's not going to get easy. You're just going to get tougher if you're going to last.
Okay. Hot seat question. All right.
Okay.
You're on the hot seat because of your position and because of your desire to build an A team. What does Ken look for in a prospect to bring on to your team? What are you looking for?
On the sales team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's that grit and tenacity. I'm looking for somebody who's motivated intrinsically, because I heard one time that you can't motivate people. You can only inspire them. They have to motivate themselves. So however you want to look at that, people need to have, some people call that the why. They need to have a reason they're doing what they're doing that's strong enough to keep them going even when it's difficult. So I'm looking for somebody who's really motivated. Now that could be because they've got a personal situation, could be they're trying to overcome something in their past, whatever that reason is. I just need something that's driving them. Maybe they're just really competitive and they like to win, but they need to be driven. And then they need to have that tenacity and that persistence. Angela Duckworth calls that grit. That was a thing for a while. People were talking about grit. It's a thing. Like, you need to be able to get in there. Again, it's the cold shower. You got to be willing to go, I'm going to get in the cold shower every day because I'm going to do something I don't want to do today in order to get something I do want tomorrow. I'm going to do the thing, and I'm going to do the thing that other people won't, so I can do the things that other people, can't do.
I was called by one of my coaching clients. He said, "Okay, Joe, one thing." I said, "What?" He goes, "What would you want a person to have if a person was going into business or into sales and they could only have one characteristic? What would it be?" I said, "Mental toughness." You can teach everything else.
Yeah.
I think you experienced this at the boot camp where you saw 20 plus people. The majority of those people had never really made outbound calls. Okay. And you saw that we were able to teach them everything they needed. So on day 3, we had an amazing score.
Yeah.
But you cannot teach mental toughness, as you just said.
Yeah, I think you can hone it and you can improve it and you can help set expectations around. But yeah, in the end, people need to be motivated intrinsically. They've got to have their reasons for moving forward and be willing to push through, because it's going to be hard. I mean, every job's hard. There's no job where it's rainbows every day. There's always some things that are difficult and challenges, but sales, especially because it's so emotionally challenging to be rejected and fight against that it just takes an extra degree of that mental toughness to want to push through. You've got to have that grit and persistence. And you're right. The rest of it is skills. And something I really loved about the training was, again, that way you reframed how to think about, look, we're making an offer and it's somewhat of an IQ test. If you tell people, look, I can deliver results, would you be interested in those results? And they say no, well, why would you want to talk them into anything? And so just reframing it. Look, if you follow your process, that's a win. You don't control the other person, whether they say yes or they say no. That's not on you. And so when you start measuring yourself on that, getting that yes, well then, you're going to be losing more than you're winning. And again, that's hard. So that was super helpful, by the way, just for me and for the team to, again, help us think about what winning looks like.
I think Andrea most bought into that because she felt like she had to lean in. and it was like freeing for her. So here's what we're going to do here. We're gonna hold off here because Ken's going to be on the Sell More Virtually site platform with interview number 2, 3, and 4. We're going to take a deep dive into this. But before we do that, hey, Ken, if a person wanted to reach out to you, okay, I think you would be great if a person was having a conference and they wanted their sales team to take it to the next level, whether it's virtually or live, I'd bring you in. If a person was going to find you, how would they get to you?
Well, first, I want to put a plug in for the Sell More Virtually website. It's fantastic, and I've been a member now for a while, and the interviews on there and the content that's on there, it's so valuable to get these additional. The podcast is great, and then to take those guests and have additional interviews with them, it's just gold. So can't recommend that site enough. So if you're not a member, you need to become a member. That said, the best way to reach me is, how could I say anything else on the Joe Pici podcast? Pick up the phone. 616-822-2998 is my cell phone. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. My cell phone's listed on LinkedIn. If you want to email, that's fine. My website is kentrupke.com, and my phone number's on there as well. Or you can email Ken at Ken Trupke. Any of those ways work. Love to talk to you. Love to see how I can help.